So I'm going to go on a little bit of a ramble about, preamble, letting people peek behind the curtain, see how the sausage gets made, more like the personal stuff that's going on in my life. If you don't want to see that and you just want to get to the album reviews, I've left the timestamp right here. Just click on that. No hard feelings at all. I know whenever there's like a lot of preamble on a video, I always just go straight to the good stuff. So if you just want to hear my thoughts about these records, go to the timestamp that I've left right there, and you'll, be saved from me rambling on for a handful of minutes. I think it's like 5 or 6 minutes about, what I am planning to do in the future. But if you want to hear all that, stick around and I will get into the weeds. So let's just get into this. I'm sure those of you that have noticed, I haven't been quite as prolific in my output as I normally tend to be. I like to put out, at least 3 videos a week, talking about records that I've been enjoying. And I haven't been able to do that. In fact, I think the last record I put out, the last video I put out was the final series of my history of prog. And I did a roundtable with a bunch of my buddies here on YouTube. But like the last album review I did was the album that I was listening to at the very beginning of September. Like I've gone through and I've recorded 4 other reviews because these are albums that I want to talk about. But I really kind of want to come in here and set expectations for myself as well as for you guys, because these last 2 months have made me really reevaluate how I approach doing these videos, because I, in the past, was able to just bang these guys out fairly regularly and fairly consistently. And I'm realizing I can't quite do that with the schedule that I'm keeping, because not only do I have this new job, but I've also kept the record job as well, the record store job. So 2 or 3 nights in the week, I'm working 12-hour shifts, 8 hours over at the library, and then another 4 hours over at the record store. So by the time I get home, I don't have time to record a new video. And, I don't have the same kind of time that I once had for even listening to new music. Just setting expectations. And I want to set expectations for me as well, because then I'll feel pressured to, keep on the grind, keep putting out the videos that I normally put out. And I know in my heart of hearts that if I do that, I'm just going to completely burn out. And that's not fair to anybody. So here's the new deal that I'm making to myself and to you guys. I'm not going to feel pressured to talk about every single record that I listen to. I'm not going to feel as if listening to every single record that I'm listening to is going to yield content for me, because that is going to make me lose interest in listening to new music, and I do not want that to happen. Alternatively, I will listen and I will report back to all the bigger releases, right? So like I've already got a review coming up of the new Jonas Lindberg record that's coming out. I know Spock's Beard is putting out a new record. I know Gazpacho is putting out a new record. So like those big records, I'm still going to put out a review for. Same with those records that I feel like I have a lot to say about. What I'm not going to do is I'm not going to force myself to sit here and talk about records that I really don't have a whole lot to talk about. And I'm going to get to a handful of those records at the end of this video, where I know I need to put out a full-length album review, but at the end of the day, I don't have a whole lot to say about. So I'm going to relinquish that need of mine to constantly be on my game to give content to you guys, right? And I think in the end, this will make for better quality content for you guys to listen to, because you will be getting my A game for those select records that I will be talking about. And I'm still going to come out here and do a couple of my think pieces and a couple of my, random thoughts that I have. I tried to get Rush tickets. That didn't happen. I got a whole lot to say about that. So, maybe in the future I will come out and, put out some of my thoughts about that as well. I also want to do this bigger series that I did, kind of in conjunction with the history of prog. I want to go through each decade and talk about my favorite records from those decades. And I think that will be a lot of fun as well. So yeah, this isn't necessarily like a, hey, I'm leaving kind of a thing. It's more of like, hey, I'm taking a slow, like I'm not even taking a step back. I'm just slowing down, right? So if you don't see me for a couple of weeks, just know that I'm going to be putting out some more videos when I can. Right? Like, I don't think I'm ever going to be quitting this. That is not something that is in my blood to do at this point. But I think I just need to reevaluate how I approach it. And so, yeah, yeah, that's just a little bit of a preamble. Just wanted to put that here right at the very beginning. All right, so originally this was going to be 20 albums that I was going to talk about, and I had a list of 20 albums, and I'm like, I have not listened to half of these. So I took off 5 completely that I'm like, nobody wants to hear me talk about these records. They didn't leave any kind of a lasting impact on me, so I'm not even going to touch upon it. The other 5, I realized, I probably should talk about these, or at least touch upon them to let you guys know about these records. At the end of the day, I didn't have enough to really talk about, so I'm going to leave those like at the end, and I've got 5 of those records. The other 10 are albums that I've been loving, that I've been diving deep into, but I don't quite have enough to say for a full-length album review, so hey, this is where we've got for this. So let's dive in. These are alphabetical order, and we've got a wide range of different styles and expressions. So let's start off with the first one. All right, I've slid over so I can put the album behind me here. We've got Sabrina Carpenter's Man's Best Friend. I've been loving this record. You know, I really like Short and Sweet that she put out last year, and I feel like this one is kind of like building upon that same momentum, and I've returned to this one a lot more than I've returned to her other record. I mean, when the worst part about this record is that vinyl cover, we could have done better, you know, but Man-Child, Tears, we almost broke up again last night, When Did You Get Hot, Go-Go Juice, these are all banger fun time tracks, but honestly, I love like My Man on Willpower, Never Getting Laid, House Tour, and Goodbye. These 4 tracks just, I don't know, they keep me going, you know, and I absolutely love them. The more I listen to it, the more I love it. And it's just fun pop music. And I feel like we've been slowly getting back to this. You know, this was something that we were getting in like the early to mid 90s within the pop music there, where it was just fun. You know, it didn't really take itself too seriously, but it wasn't like club scene pop music. It was just like fun music. So I've been loving this one. Yeah, I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but man, this one is probably going to be my most listened to album of the year. So yeah, let's move on to the next record. All right, Stella Cole with her latest record of It's Magic. I have been loving Stella Cole's career. You know, I first got introduced to her on, I want to say it was TikTok where I found her. Loved her debut self-titled release. I then immediately got her Christmas album, which I absolutely adore and I love. Have to be perfectly honest though, I'm a little bit disappointed with this one. I just feel like we're circling the same style over and over and over again, and I feel like she's not quite developing as an artist. Like, all the tracks on here are bangers. You know, it's that lounge jazz bar scene that we got from like the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and I love that style, and I'm so glad that we're getting more of this style here, but I just feel like she's kind of leaning too far on that same style that she's been doing for quite a while, and I didn't really hear a lot of development on here. It's not necessarily a knock against her, but where I love the first record, this one left me wanting a little bit more. So yeah, I would recommend listening to her first record. I really appreciated that one, and this one was a little bit of a lukewarm for me. You know, I wanted a little bit more. So yeah, that's what I've got for this one. Let's move on to the next one. All right, this is why we're here. We're talking about some deep prog. Steven Wilson has gone through and revitalized a lot of classic live records. This is his most recent one. I guess no, Deep Purple was probably his most recent one. But he did this one as well, Playing the Fool from Gentle Giant, and he's expanded upon it. He's added a lot more tracks to it, and it sounds fantastic. Like, this really goes to show the talent that Gentle Giant has with playing such complex tracks on point every single time. Like, I am astounded with listening to the studio releases and being like, there's no way they'd be able to play this live, and then listening to the live recording and being like, holy geez, they really are playing all this live. And like, it astounds me. They breathe fresh new life into all these tracks, and when these tracks are already as vibrant and as insane as they are, I can't give it higher praise. And what Steven has been able to do with bringing out so many of those deeper cuts and the, smaller sounds on it is incredible. Absolutely incredible. This is the definitive way to listen to most of these tracks that are found on here, and I can't praise it more. If you're a fan of Gentle Giant, you need to do yourself a favor and listen to this if you haven't already, and it needs to be in anybody's progressive rock collection. So, yeah, it was a great one. Let's talk about this next one. Jack the Joker with their album The Devil to Play in the Backlands. This is a new one for me. This one was a lot of fun. I've been recommended this album by a number of my friends and colleagues, and it kind of reminds me of the same flavor that we were getting from bands like Parius, like No Spoon, where it's kind of this next iteration of progressive metal music that started with Haken and Native Construct, from the mid to early 2010s. I feel like this is like the next iteration, and where I can kind of give a pass to bands like Parius, where I can give a pass to No Spoon, where at least they were doing something new or the music was just outstanding and amazing. This one did, it was a great time, and the metaphor that I always use is like, this is like a good burger for me. I've never had, well, I shouldn't say never. I rarely have a bad burger because I just love the taste of a burger, but some places do burgers better than others, right? And this is where I feel like Jack the Joker does a really good burger, but I've had better burgers in the past. No Spoon, great burger. Haken, great burger. Parius, great burger. Yankerit, it was all right, Jack the Joker, it was all right. So, like, if you're a fan of this style of progressive metal music, I think you're really going to like it, and I really do, I say go and listen to it, because, like, the vocals are spot on in that Ross Jennings, No Spoon kind of a flavor, but because all I've been eating are burgers lately, it does feel like I'm starting to get a little full of burgers. So I think that this will resonate with the fan base like very heavily, and I highly recommend it to anybody that loves this style of music. But I don't think this is going to turn any heads for anybody that hasn't already had their head turned, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's what I've got for The Devil to Play in the Backgrounds. Let's move on to the next one. All right, let's talk about one of the albums that I have been completely obsessed over. Like, I think this one, Sabrina Carpenter's Man's Best Friend, and a handful of others, those are like my most listened to records of this year. We're talking about Leve and her album A Matter of Time. I have been struggling with how to pronounce her name. She is an Icelandic singer-songwriter, a lot more jazzy oriented. And for the longest time, I thought it was Lafe, but it's Leve with a V. And I know that she's even, like, there's more of a mouth sound within the Icelandic language, so it's like Leve to properly pronounce it, but we're here to talk about the music here. Leve and A Matter of Time. I've been loving this record. This is the style of pop music that I absolutely love. It's jazzy, it's fun, it's poppy, it's very optimistic. There's so much about this that I absolutely just gush over, and yeah, it's just like a nice warm hug. There's a lot of tracks on here that I can't help but gush over. Clockwork, Castle in Hollywood, Too Little Too Late, Tough Luck. These tracks are the ones that I come back to time and time and time again. I love her poetry. I love her singing style. I love the musicianship that's found on here. There's a lot more of a full-on orchestra on here. Like Cuckoo Ballet, the interlude being like almost 4 minutes long, it's practically a full-on ballet, with strings and soaring soundscapes, and I absolutely love this. My only gripe, and I have a lot to say about this, so, buckle yourselves in. My only gripe is that the songs on here are too short. It's like the moment that I start to get into a track, it just cuts itself by the knees. And like I said, I have such a friggin' long rant that I want to get into about this. because like there's a lot of build up on these tracks, especially for Too Little Too Late and Tough Luck and Castle in Hollywood. But because none of them are over 4 minutes long, it always feels like I'm building up, and I'm not quite done building up. Like, not even talking about we're getting into a crescendo or we're getting into like the play out version. It's like I'm still building up when it's cut short. And so like, I think the best metaphor and the best way to put this in is... All right, Lorna Shore, let's talk about some really guttural metal music. Lorna Shore being like, I think the royalty right now of the tech death metal. You know, like absolutely insane stuff with I Feel the Ever Black Festering Within Me. Yeah, I mean, I've been, messing around with Lorna Shore for a while now. I love how guttural and how extreme they are. And this album I love because, like, these guys are not afraid to stretch a track out. And this album is a beast to listen to. So, like, if you're not ready for it, it will just grab you with both hands and not let you go until you are able to find yourself free. It's aggressive. It's intense. I love the padding that's found around a lot of these tracks. Like, they almost have a full-length orchestra that's found within a lot of the synth work that's found on here. And for me, that's where this album really shines. Yes, I love when they are screaming their balls off. They're playing a mile a minute, but it's that atmosphere that's building everything up around them that I love the most. Like, that is where I really shine towards Lorna Shore. And so it makes those very impactful moments hit and hit hard while also allowing the smaller moments to just breathe, I don't know if this is quite their best work, but it definitely is them riding the highs of their best work, So, yeah, if you're a fan of Lorna Shore and you want something that's aggressive and will just, like, really, like, grab hold of you and not let you go, you can't go wrong with this. So, yeah, this one gets a big old thumbs up for me, and I've been loving it, and I wish I had more time with it, but I've been a little busy, and I'd rather listen to something a little bit more soothing. Let's move on to the next one. All right, let's talk about one of the forerunners for Album of the Year, if I'm being perfectly honest, Marina with Princess of Power. Man, nothing gives me bigger gender euphoria than listening to an album like this, Like, I've just been absolutely loving this record. This is one of those records that I've been having on, like, repeat. And honestly, it's just for a handful of tracks. Like the title track of Princess of Power, I Heart You, and like a smattering of other tracks, like maybe Metallic Stallion. I've talked a lot about this record in other places. When you finally let go of cringe, you can finally embrace of who you are. And I feel like that's where this album really is, with tracks like Cupid's Girl and Hello Kitty having some really cringe moments on here, but man, I see myself in every fold of this record, and every time I listen to it, I just feel empowered about it as well. I've been loving this record. This album is a bop. It's a banger, and as I was saying, like, the three big frontrunners of Album of the Year are Jacob Berber's The Passing, FM's Allo Babar, and this one, like, these are the three forerunners of Album of the Year. And it's just hilarious that this is where we find ourselves. So yeah, I know this one's not for everybody. Even those within the Marina circle have kind of been lukewarm about this record, but I don't know. I've been loving it, and maybe you will too. So yeah, that's what I've got for Princess of Power. All right, let's talk about a soundtrack. I've been loving the Tron series of soundtracks. First one being Wendy Carlos. Second one being Daft Punk. Third one being helmed by Nine Inch Nails of all people. And man, what a banger of a soundtrack. My wife and I have been trying to see this movie because we binge watched the first two movies in preparation for it, and it's not looking like we're going to see it. I've seen the reviews. It's middling at best. Neither of us are a big fan of Jared Leto. In fact, we'd rather not watch a movie with him starring in it. So I think we're just going to wait for it to come on to streaming. But man, I was first in line the day this album dropped to listen to it because it is such a friggin' banger, you know? Not only within the soundscapes, like Trent Reznor is perfect at commanding an atmosphere and an emotional outpour. And he's already done amazing work on past soundtracks like Challengers and the latest Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles of all places. So like he's got his fingers in different pots and how to command emotion through the screen. And what a better place than Tron to have this one. And damn, this has motifs that'll stick with me throughout the day that I'll just be like humming along to, or I'll be like, man, I really want to listen to this. This has just been a vibe, you know, and I've absolutely been loving it. Even if the movie is shit, man, the album's a banger. So yeah, that's what I've got for this one. All right, let's talk about one that I was desperate to try to get a full-length album review for, but I just ran out of steam, and that is The World is a Beautiful Place and I'm No Longer Afraid to Die with Dreams of Being Dust. I would catalog this as more of like indie prog. You know, I really love their Illusionary Worlds, I believe or Illusionary Walls, their last record, which was a little bit more optimistic, you know. This was of like, hey, the world is turning to shit, but we can still turn it around. The world is a beautiful place, but we have to make it that way. And that was the lasting impression of that last record. This album was like, y'all done fucked up. Now we're all going to die. Right. And that's essentially the overall flavor of this record. It's like this one and the Great Wide Nothings album of this year were both very much like, y'all done fucked up. We kept telling you guys that we needed to turn things around and we're only making it worse. And now we're all going to die painful, painful deaths because of the actions that you are currently undertaking. And so in this case, The World is a Beautiful Place and I'm No Longer Afraid to Die is much more of like the world is all messed up and now I just want the sweet release of death. You know, like there's dripping angst on here. It's very aggressive, but man, the music that's found around it is just top shelf. You know, like this is probably their best record in terms of the actual music that's found on it. I was so blown away by how like commanding they were, how immediate it was. They are like, this is the best The World is a Beautiful Place and I'm No Longer Afraid to Die album that they've ever put out, bar none. It's just like, I love it and they're 100% right. But man, sometimes I just need a little bit of power of Princess of Power to get me through the day, you know? Like, I just need a little bit of a cleansing palette. Yeah, this is the album that I'll put on when I'm feeling the angst and I'm feeling the oomph, and I just need a little bit of release. But man, what a banger. I highly recommend this one, but also go in knowing what you're going to get because it's powerful. All right, let's talk about the last one. The Clearing by Wolf Alice. This one kind of came out of nowhere for me. My buddy Nathan actually was the one that recommended that I listen to it. And it was funny. He recommended it to me after I had already picked it up because the record store had it. And I listened to the first two tracks. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm picking this guy up. This is the perfect intersection between a lot of the different flavors of pop that I've already been listening to this year. You know, we've got a little bit of the Laffy, we've got a little bit of the Stella Cole, we got a little bit of Sabrina Carpenter, all coming together into this almost perfect marriage of all these different styles. You know, you got a little bit of the lounge bar singer stylings on there. This also has a lot of flavors of another album that I've been listening to, Cults, with To the Ghosts. Been loving that record this year. It came out last year and I kind of slept on it, and I'm kind of ashamed because, man, like these two records of To the Ghosts and The Clearing are kind of like sisters together, and I've been absolutely loving this one. If you're a fan of more of this, like more rocking pop music, then I would highly recommend giving this one a spin because I've been absolutely loving it. And that's the end. That gives us all 10 records. The final 5, I'm just going to really rapid fire. These are the ones that I've been kind of listening to, kind of had it on my back burner. But I'm just, like I said, I'm just letting them go. I'm letting them go because they're just sitting there staring at me. And I wanted to give a full-length album review too, or even talk about them. But at the end of the day, I find I just didn't have a whole lot to say. And again, these are also going to be in alphabetical order. So the first one we have is Black Braid 3 from Black Braid. More Black Braid. If you love the first 2, you're going to love this one. Then we've got Ekelin with Time Silent Radio 2 and 7. These guys came out at the very beginning of the year. I gave them a good listen, and I just found like I didn't have too much to say. They're bangers. I love them, but at the end of the day, it's just more Ekelin, you know? Yeah. They're great. They're fun, but I just didn't have a whole lot to say. I found myself listening to 7 more than 2, which is funny because 2 is only 2 tracks and 7 is 7 minutes or 7 tracks. Yeah, they're fun, but I just didn't have a whole lot to say about them. Igor's record with Amen. Again, a banger album. Absolutely loved it. Didn't have a whole lot to say about it. Same with Ilo, I believe is, with Legacy. I'll probably go back and listen to this one a lot more because there's a lot more nooks and crannies, and like, this is on the same vein as, say, like an Abstract Illusion with their album of this year. And I just found I had more to say about that record than I had about this one. I'll probably go back and maybe do a full-length album review. We'll see. But as the time is, I'm just going to leave it as such. And then finally, I think it's Vianova. Finally got it. With Hit It. Ian over at Rhyme Signatures turned me on to this one, and it was a banger. It was great, but after I got that first couple of squeezes, didn't have a whole lot else to say about it. So yeah, those are the final 5. You know, I'm just kind of letting them go. I've had my fun with them, and now I'm sending them off like a good lover, and if they return to me, I know it was meant to be, but if they stay away, then that's fine. So those are all my big albums. This was a pretty long review. Let me know all about the records that you've been grooving to this past couple of months. Which ones from the list that I've given were your favorites? Which ones were you most surprised about? Which ones did you not like? Let me know all about that and anything that you have to say by commenting down below. And I think that is where I'm going to leave you for today. So I want to thank you all so much for watching. Don't worry, I will be back. I'm just going to take a little bit of a breather. I recorded a whole bunch today, so I'm going to edit these guys and space them out so that you're not going to go too long without me. I've got a bunch of reviews that I still want to do that I haven't recorded, but we'll get to those in time. As for right now, I want to thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.